The time has come for my people to go.
I'm not a queen, I'm a servant of the people. I'm not a king, I'm a servant of the people. It's what the people demand, we gonna keep fighting till we get that land. I'm not a queen, I'm a servant of the people. I'm not a king, I'm a servant of the people. It's time to rise, to get what we want, we got to organize.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Pantsula Podcast, brought to you by the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. For those of you who are not familiar with the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, we are a mass revolutionary party that was founded by Kwame Ture in 1968 via the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. So our objective is Pan-Africanism, and I'm going to go ahead and define how we define it, because I know there's so many different renditions of Pan-Africanism. We essentially define it as the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. So we actually air this podcast every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And every episode we like to dedicate to one of our ancestors. And this one in particular, we're going to dedicate to Eduardo Mondlane of Frelimo, the Liberation Front for Mozambique, and Titina Silla of PAIGC, which is the African Independence for Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde Islands. And on this episode, I actually have my comrades with me, Evie and Evan. Not Evie.
Evan. You got your nickname, Evie.
Yeah, so we have Evan and Jesse on this episode. So on this episode, we're actually going to cover We Are Our Ancestors. That's the headline for this episode. I know there's a lot of stuff out there via social media and just everyday encounters. People, I'm not my ancestors. So I think we can unpack the importance of, why we are our ancestors, and tying our struggles and everything we do day to day to our ancestors and what they've done.
Well, for me, it motivates me to do this work, because if it wasn't for them, I couldn't do this work. None of us could do this work if it wasn't for our ancestors that have done the work. So anyone saying stuff like we're not our ancestors is not clear of their history, because the history shows us that our ancestors fought against this system. And that's why we honor them every time we do a podcast. Even when I work out, I honor a hard workout like mountain climbers. I hate doing mountain climbers. It's the worst workout ever. But anytime I do it, I dedicate it to an ancestor that fought for my liberation. I think of what they did, because it helps me just understand that all of the quote unquote privileges and the things that I can enjoy, the things that we all enjoy in society, has been paid for by our ancestors, like their work. I was listening to a friend of mine say, they claimed they were in church and the preacher said, "Oh, Jesus paid it all." And he was like, "Actually, our ancestors paid." And I was like, you know what? That's right. They actually did. And we don't really call our focus to just the people who have laid our line. And I think we have to do that, because if anything, it motivates us to continue the work. And we also say here that the best way to honor your ancestor is continue their work. I mean, it's one thing to say, "Oh, I'm inspired by them," but if you can't pick up where they left off, then you're just window dressing. So I think The importance of honoring your ancestors is bringing back to your attention that this work has been done, and that the only way we're going to continue it is if we take it upon ourselves.
Yeah, I think. Oh, you say you're going to go ahead, Devin?
Yes. And you have to remember that some of the things that our ancestors were struggling against, we're still struggling against them too. Whether it to the same extent or it looks a little different, then we're still struggling against it. So, of course, for our ancestors, and to deny that is just I think it's a masterful job done by the colonial powers and the imperialist media to sort of wash away the differences and sort of say that, "Oh, I'm not my ancestor." Like I would have fought back. Would you have picked up that gun? Would you have gotten that machete?
Exactly.
And some people right now, they're not the ancestors. Like looking down on like, what are you doing?
That reminds me of the quote I heard someone say, like, if anyone is asking what they would have done if they were a slave, look at what you're doing right now.
Mm.
You know, that just was like, that's true. Like, would you, if you want to know what you would have done, what you doing right now? Like,
Exactly.
are you, because our ancestors burned down the plantation. It wasn't like, you know, I mean, we had obviously some ancestors that were in the house. I guess there's a larger conversation to have about just the mentality of just the house Negro and the field Negro, right? Like, there's obviously a divide of communication. Work with the master, or you can't build using the master's tools, as Audrey Hepburn said. Who said that?
So I know it may have been Malcolm X. I know we were referring to the house and
the master's tool. It was a
I don't know. Maybe I know we were referring to the
Audre Lorde. Yes.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I know we were making reference to the house and field Negro. I know that.
Malcolm
X had a good, he made a good analysis on that. Yeah, exactly. But I think like kind of some of what you guys said is like we wouldn't be here without our ancestors. If they didn't lay the lines and shed their blood. Like the reason we enjoy the things we enjoy, even though it's small concessions that they've made. And they've only made those concessions through the bloodshed of our ancestors and the willpower of our ancestors. We wouldn't have these things because think about how, given how was it Jim Crow versus, like, even though it's still a racist, fascist system, if it wasn't for, SCLC, SNCC and Black Power, Black Panthers, and all the different movements at that time that were really struggling for power, we will probably still be in those situations as intense as it was back then. Still intense now, but you can imagine, going to sit at the diner and, getting beat the hell out of yourself just because of your skin, whatever, right? Granted, I don't want to phrase this in no liberal way to make it seem like, oh yeah, because of that, we're all free now. It's like, no, I'm just saying that there was no progress done and essentially without the bloodshed of our ancestors. Right. Whether you think about it here in the snakes, you think about it on the continent, any small concessions have been made because our ancestors
had to be put in situations that a lot of us wouldn't even be comfortable being put in. And that's what gives me, again, the encouragement to continue this work, because like, imagine the conditions they were living in. Like, we're reading in our work study process, two colonialisms, and just understanding what the people were dealing with in Guinea-Bissau is like just being on alert and just not having to eat, fighting, like we talked about in our last podcast, liberation zones, and just understanding in parts of the world, people are dealing with it much harder. And as you said, Evan, we're still currently dealing with it. It's not like just because we have this concession, these various concessions that we've gotten over the years, all of that doesn't amount to anything when you look into just the amount of exploitation that's continually happening. And I think right now, and I think the most important is for people to be aware of just having this understanding that this is happening, like read, inform yourself so that you can participate in this struggle, because it's not like power is going to just say, you know what, let's give people what they want. Okay, they want harmony, they want connection. Let's just give up our greed and give up the exploitation. Let's make this world better by stepping down so that everyone can come in. Let's deliver stimmy checks to everybody. That's not enough. You gotta have that higher connection, and that only happens when we organize enough to be aware of these realities and not being influenced by. I mean, another thing we can talk about is just kind of how movies talk about our ancestors. We've talked about this before. Just the ways we think of our ancestors are usually just kind of like, we look at their lives as if it was just a static vacuum action. It wasn't a group of organisms that involved the process, but just one person, like the superhero. The superhero he defeats the villain, and then we're all good. It's like, no, there's a community, and that can be addressed.
No, that's a good point. And just to jump back to what I was stating earlier, I think it ties into some people be like, oh yeah, our ancestors died for the vote. And then that's how they phrase them in movies, right? Like when you think about, the civil rights movements, you just think about since everything, we want to vote, or, we want to sit at the counter with a white man or white woman, whatever. It's like, that was an emphasis of liberation for us. It's like, no, we died because we wanted to control our destiny. We wanted self-determination. We didn't want to be victims of oppression and repression, essentially. So You know, and that's how they like to phrase it to us too. And I think the movies like to pretty much create an environment where it's like, okay, if you want to fight against the system, this is what we're going to do to you. So essentially, it's either, you know, you have a situation where radical, you know, they have someone set up as a radical, and all in most cases, they don't even position them in the right element or give them context to why they're radical. It is like the angry, you know, Black man or woman, whatever the case is. So, you know, they just really just disorient how their whole movement came about. Essentially just to have us thinking like, oh, okay, they were just angry. They don't know why they were angry, but they were angry. So, so we don't know why neither. So they just look crazy. They deserve to be locked up or whatever happened to them. They deserved it. Or on the other side of it, it's like I was saying earlier, it's like, okay, you know, they have a radical and they're fighting a system and they're gaining some type of success and momentum. Then it's like the state kills them. So then that's just in itself shows you shouldn't do anything. You should just be okay with what we give you. Kind of like you were saying earlier, it's like, you know, capitalism or the system itself isn't going to just, you know, make concessions on its own. They just don't give you power like, oh, here you go. It's, you know, I think we have to get out the idea that capitalism is just going to, I know everyone wants to think that that's how it works. Everyone wants it because I think people just don't want to have to take action. They just want the system to fall on its own and don't have to replace with anything. You know, we hear a lot of those things like, oh yeah, capitalism is falling, you know, it's ending. But a lot of people, they say that and don't talk about, okay, what's going to happen once it does fall? Are we organizing to replace it? Are we just going to sit there? Oh, it fell. So here's another form of capitalism. We're just watching it come over like, oh, okay, look, it's coming. Oh, exploitation, look. It's like, what?
They're making diesel stocks and deliver Ubers and...
Yeah. It's crazy, man. It's just like, you know, we have to look at these things. But I know I kind of went on a tangent, but yeah, we are ancestors, and like, I don't know, kind of like what Evan said, I question if some of y'all are your ancestors because, man, if you are your ancestors, I don't know. If you are your ancestors, man, you probably Judas. You probably, I don't know. I don't know, man. You're a CIA agent. I don't know. Your ancestor was probably a CIA agent. The way some of y'all be moving, I don't know, man. Yeah, y'all was cool. Y'all was, you know,
you're the one
y'all was collaborating with the slave catchers,
right?
Then.
Like, what was going on?
Yeah.
What happened?
But you're the one who told on that.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, y'all told on Nat Turner. Y'all definitely told on Nat Turner. Y'all was trying to tell on Harriet Tubman. But yeah, but for the one that line with radical politics, you know, we are ancestors in the sense of the true liberators and revolutionaries. You know, we try to invoke their spirits, and I think we need to because, you know, especially the ones who've done damage to the system, have made changes and have forced the system to make any type of change or make any type of concession, essentially. You know, we need to study them and we need to evoke their spirits at all times. You know, and then, you know, then we can lay the ground. So, you know, 100 years later that, you know, our grandchildren, whatever, can evoke our spirits or, you know, the future, you know, our future generations can evoke our spirits. So yeah.
All right. I think of, again, Kwame Ture is the reason why me and you, Jeffrey, in particular, we started, you know, we joined the A-APRP because I watched videos of him and he kept saying one of his main highlights was join the organization, join the organization, join the organization. The main problem is not that, it's not this, it's not that, it's because you're not organized. And again, I mean, he's absolutely right about that. So, I mean, we can definitely continue on when we look back at the many examples of people who have been on the front line of the struggle and they didn't stop, you know, and you can't really expect to see them on television. You're not going to expect to see your ancestors talked about in a way that will encourage you to make action. Because I would say, as we talked about last time in our last podcast, like the CIA and their involvement in these movies, they know this. Like they read actually, you know, what the movements are going around, what's happening in the world so that they can, you know, maximize their efforts. And in the same fashion, we should do the same. And actually, it's so invigorating every week to just know there's a new book, or every month rather, there's a new book as a part of our book list that I can read and understand, you know, something more that I wasn't going to get, that I'm not going to get, that you either will not get from, the media or any other form of information if it's not coming from, people getting together, talking about it. Because it's not also just reading, but also, understanding just the dialectics of the people you read about and just what made their challenges, the challenges that they had. So,
yeah.
And you talk about that is not only talking about what you read, but how it's applied to what you do. So,
right.
So if you say you want to work in solidarity with Africans in Haiti, you understand why you're working in solidarity with Haiti, because of the neocolonial government that's in control of there, and you're doing it because, if you look at your history, that there wasn't no clean separation between Africans that were enslaved that dropped off in the Snakes or dropped off in Haiti, dropped off in Jamaica, dropped off in Brazil, or so. Like there was inter-African travel by the slave masters, and as well as the Maroons and Quilombos and other places that when they freed themselves, they try to go elsewhere, or they're captured, they're taken elsewhere, or one African was getting a little too feisty for the European, they took him elsewhere. So you gotta realize that it is a African struggle. So regardless of where you are, there's a bit of you in Haiti, there's a bit of you in Guyana, there's a bit of you in Guatemala, there's a bit of you in Jamaica, in Barbados. So.
Exactly. And I think maybe we could even talk about what does it look like to continue our ancestors' work as well. The ones who laid the foundation. What can we do to continue their work, essentially? Because we all want to evoke their spirits. And, we quote them, and what else can we do outside of that? Outside of we want to keep reading their materials and putting it out there, obviously, and regurgitate some of the things they say and their principles. But outside of that, maybe even expanding on that, what else can we do to continue that work?
I think a little bit going spoke about earlier, just understand that history, understand what were they doing, and understand again, they didn't do everything perfectly. They didn't have the ideal. They always have the right solution every single time. They made mistakes. They did some evolving, or there's some things they evolved upon, some things they were consistent upon. So understanding what they do and applying that to what you're doing work right now. I think that's the big thing, to see that there's a lot out there from ancestors, and not only just people who are that we talk about, that either you hear about or you talk about in work study, but the ancestors out in your hood, or out in on the farm, out in the wherever,
your community,
and yours, you might they might have been doing some. I know there are quite a few people in my family do some they're working for the pigs or do something like that. Even then, there were some things that I learned from stuff they were doing, like seeing Angela Davis, or Stokely, or Kwame Ture, or something. They were. I don't think they were informing on them, but so or anyone tries to don't do that. So
they're gonna find you on Twitter.
What's going on?
But it's not not only about our African, our general radical ancestors, but also there are probably some ancestors of your own that you can find something. Even if they didn't lead a enslaved African revolt, or they didn't lead some socialist party, or didn't lead some rebellion or riot, they probably maybe they were they were inventors, or
maybe they made shoes, they cooked the food, they were the doctor. Everyone has a part to play. And I think that's what you said. It's not just our ancestors or anyone that is left behind a trail. They've done the work. And going back to what you said, like, it's just the appliance. You read and then you apply. Okay, how can I use their determination and how I go forward with whatever objective I set for myself? How can I utilize the way they developed their apparatus of organizing in their revolution? How can I incorporate that in my organizing efforts? Like, and there's so many examples, and our ancestors are just the living proof that you can. There have been, because we're told all day that suddenly Abraham Lincoln was like, let's just, yeah, let's free 'em. Yeah, we could do that. And a lot of people, like, they just think, we've gotten, a lot of people really believe that the concessions and all the progress that we've, quote unquote, made has been through this awakening from the enemy. Like, the enemy just had this awakening, as opposed to understanding that our ancestors, people were actually fighting and organizing and mobilizing and doing whatever they needed to do to get free. And that's something we have to continue, this struggle. And we can be encouraged when we read history. I mean, that's the best thing, to read and know that there were people before you that actually did it, because then that should be encouragement. Like, hey, I can do this. There have been many people before me that have made this work. And even though obviously all humans, we have flaws, we can learn dialectically from those examples that they set. And it's very hard to do that when you're just told that one individual or one hero came out of the woodworks and made it happen. I think when you study history, it just diffuses that, and it becomes clear that there's just this there's just so many people we're reading about, and constantly will read about, that continue this work.
And I think we have to humanize our ancestors too. Recently, I was on Twitter, and I think it was a Du Bois quote or something that I said about Du Bois, and then someone like came and said something like, Du Bois, like, kind of like, Du Bois, what? You're gonna evoke the talented 10th? What? I mean, he didn't say all that. He didn't say all that, but I knew that was a framework of what he was saying.
A lot of people, yeah,
or like, they either say it in that context, or he was against Garvey and all this other stuff. It's like, our ancestors make mistakes, and sometimes they acknowledge it during their lifetime, right? And we have to understand. And this is why it goes to our last episode. And every episode we probably made so far in regards to political education, because these people grew politically or ideologically because they engage in rigorous study. So you think about Malcolm X, is like, from his time as NOI to like the last year or two of his life, he expanded his analysis. He furthers his analysis essentially because he engaged in that political process. And we also have to understand that they're human. They make mistakes. That my analysis a year, 2-3 years ago was definitely not the analysis I have now. So you can't pigeonhole them to one point in their life and say this encompasses their whole life, because this is what they did for a majority of their life, or 2 or 3 years of their life. You have to understand that, let's analyze this for the full spectrum on what they contributed to the liberation. What they contributed to society in general, instead of just trying to say, this aspect of your life, you were wrong, so that means you were wrong your whole life, right? Now, obviously, some people, they were wrong their whole life, but I think we have to understand and just contextualize everything at the end of the day, and understand that they are human. They're not some mystical creature that came out of space and was like, like Jesus is came from earth, from heaven or something. Yeah.
And think about how Europeans, they do their whole ancestry. Like, Thomas Jefferson did this, or George Washington. Or like you think about Miss Reagan, or I'm clean.
Oh, yeah. Oh God.
That's not that, but
I'm a queen.
Man. That's so true. It's like they hail their ancestors, and it's like we're the ones over here talking about I'm not my ancestor. And I know a lot of it is that we're ideologically confused and we're unorganized. But man, it is frustrating to see it in the time where, like you said, like you were saying, Evan, it's like they just valorize all their, fascist, capitalist, racist pigs, criminals. Oh God, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, the founding fathers,
right?
People
and they have an apparatus to just allow that continuously, 24/7. The media is telling you all of these people are great, And, you know, if you're watching television or if you're not even politically astute, but yet you have some awareness of who that founding father is, you're going to probably think, if you don't have that political education, that, oh, well, yeah, they did this. Well, didn't he free the slaves? Well, didn't he, like, no. It's like, you got to, and I mean, that even goes into my intention to create, and me and Jeffrey have talked about this, like, material in which people can get this information easier, because sometimes people hear reading and, you know, there's a lot of, again, I don't understand. I've always loved reading, but not everyone seems to get the importance and the necessity of it. But I mean, it's a reason why we were barred from reading. Like,
exactly
that. Even so, I mean, it's like we got to understand through this process, reading and coming into this awareness, it should invigorate us to also build alliances with other organizations and people who are trying to, you know, united on that same front. And we can just develop so much if we get to that point. But a lot of us, you know, we're just hijacked because we don't think our ancestors have been there, that there has been no work done, that we've just recently made the progress with the selection of Barack Obama, you know, or any other, or Kamala Harris, or anyone who else represents, you know, imperialism, and people look at that and like, oh, why wouldn't you be celebrating this? Like, this is actually a good thing. This is representation. But that's what reading helps diffuse.
How dare you talk about our Secretary of Defense?
And for that, I would say, how dare you not know about U.S. imperialism? Or how dare you not understand that these are systems as opposed to individuals?
Yeah, for real. Man, intersectional imperialism, man. That's it's a bastard, man. And it's crazy because you even see how, you know, they humanize the you know, their ancestors or founding fathers. You know, you put them on money. You know, that's what makes them.
Yeah, exactly. You put them on money. That's power. Because then people, like, you look at that, and I mean, I was just thinking about this recently. If all of the hip hop songs about, you know, George Washington or Thomas,
all about the Benjamins,
right? All about like all of these imperial, disgusting, blood sucking beep 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 beep. You praising these dudes because they represent, because money is seen as power when it's just literally a token. It could be, you know, it's nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, they put them on money. They put statues up in front of them.
Right.
And then even then, you know, people pulling out statues during, you know, the riots recently, you know, in the various places, like what's going on, like in Minnesota and places like that, you know, with George Floyd and everything. And it's like, all right, that's cool. That's symbolism. But it's like, all right, what are we going to do to, like, you know, if take political power? You know what I mean?
That's what we need. You got to take political power, and you got to understand the difference between emblematic, you know, tokens like statues.
Yeah, exactly.
Brothers and sisters and other Africans in Tanzania talking about Cicero Rhodes. That I don't know what word to use, but
man, it's wild, man. And you know, we have to you know, look at our ancestors and you know, understand them in their entirety, and just don't take it for what the media pumps into us, because they're gonna pump into us you know, their version of what our ancestors were, essentially. And then also too, like kind of like you know, Evan was saying earlier, is like, you know, our ancestors, you know, that within our bloodline, you know, we could even do some digging in our history, in our own history, talk to our family, our elders within our family, understand, you know, what they may have done as well. Some of them may have been in organizations. Some of them may have been fighting against colonialism and imperialism and racism, and we just may not know. But we should always hold them to higher regard too as well, and not just a few people within the struggle. And then also, when we talk about the struggle, we should always talk about the organizations that they belong to. And that's something I try to do all the time. You know, I say someone's name. When I say Secretary, I try to follow up with PDG. When I say Kwame Ture, I try to follow up the A-APRP or like the Convention People's Party. You know, I try to follow up with their organizations because I understand it wasn't just them. And a lot of them were humble. You know, Kwame Nkrumah didn't want to be called doctor. He didn't like being called doctor. He wanted to be called Kwame Nkrumah. You know, so, and I know a lot of times we just think it's just that one person. No. We have to understand it's collective.
Right.
Even our ancestor Harriet Tubman, she was in a forget the name of the club, but she was in one of the women's clubs that were popular in like the late 19th century, early 20th century before she transitioned.
Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
know that.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, there's this
Trying to
is
put her on
over.
a dollar bill again.
Oh yeah. Oh, say we get into that too, man. That's bad.
Again, that's because they figure, oh well, people want to see themselves. They want to see themselves on television. If we put them on money, maybe they'll really want to be like, I want to be a part of the petty bourgeois class, and they'll really try to climb up this ladder and just, you know, and that's just and the fact that Africans around the world are not insulted by that and should be going around like, no, we don't want her on the money. Don't put her on this money. You know, as opposed to like, yeah, we need her on the money. It's like,
yeah.
But what kind of contradiction that America is not even able to face? That they can't even face that type of contradiction. This is a person who, if it wasn't for Harriet Tubman, so much of what we know wouldn't be. And that's an ancestor that wouldn't even want to be on those stinking dollar bills. She
exactly. Yeah, like she was anti-establishment to the core, man. There's no way she would have been like, yeah, put me on it. Yeah.
They didn't even pay. Like one of the big things was that she didn't get paid, like for her pen. Like she didn't get paid for the duty she did for the Union Army. Like that was a big part, and
man,
kind of ironic that. And I think that's the.
They never even wanted if it wasn't for her, and they didn't even compensate her.
Exactly.
That war would have not happened. It would have not been one if it wasn't for Harriet Tubman. She was an advisor.
Yeah. It's like, man, and then like you were saying, like people are going to take that as some type of token progress. It's like that doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. And then it's like you said, it's disrespectful to put her on money. Is in general for what this country stands for.
Money is a colonizer, someone who was a brutal murderer. Everybody
like
you think of.
And then just think of even on the surface level, you just think about all the people on the money that's printed on the money are enslavers, and you know the people who own slaves. Like,
right.
Like I don't know why you would want our ancestors to be aligned with Thomas, with Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, and it's like, why do you want to have her name in any of those aligned with any of those people? It's like she was against everything they stood for in the system.
Well, those like really huge bills, like you might rarely see or they use in like the banks. Like I think one of them had Woodrow Wilson on it. Like,
oh my God! Oh my God!
That's what I'm saying.
Man, I'm actually reading about Wilson. Man, that guy was serious. Man, this book by Mumia Abu Jamal and Victoria. I can't remember his name. I think it's Robert Victoria. Man, yeah, man. It's like, why do you want to have these people aligned with?
Because one of the reasons is the masses of the people are not aware of their relationship to history and the role they played in it. I mean, people were, and to the extent in which people understand that these presidents were slave masters, it's almost like a distant reality. Like they didn't continue that legacy in other forms. Like it didn't gradually become neo-colonialism over time. Like, we had these presidents that quote, people talk about Kennedy and all these quote unquote progressive presidents. It's like you read into their history, it's like they kept U.S. imperialism and capitalism to its T. That's their role.
Exactly.
No U.S. president. I don't care how nice they were, how friendly they were with the media. None of them represented the people because they believed in the exploitation of the people. They actively participated in coups that overthrew, governments that were ran by the people. So clearly, you can't say that there's a U.S. president that tries to honor our ancestor. I mean, the U.S. government is very clear on who their enemy is. They still have Assata Shakur as top enemy. They want her.
Yeah, exactly.
So that should tell you right there. Like you can't be deceived by any emblematic token that they give to an ancestor, because every once in a while they'll pay. You have people like the CIA from Twitter and everyone honoring Martin Luther King or honoring who else?
FBI.
FBI honoring Martin Luther King. If that can't tell you what this is, then you ain't paying attention. You're not looking. You're not reading it.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't understand. You don't understand system. Man, listen, I'm gonna say this. Anybody who takes the helm, I don't care if they're trans, I don't care if they're African, I don't care if they're European, I don't care what they are. They're gonna stand for capitalism and imperialism. That's it. That's what this country is about. I don't care if you say Bernie Sanders, you think he's socialist, he's not. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry, he's not. He took the helm, he was gonna still bomb Libya, he was still gonna exploit Africa for the resources, the global south essentially for the resources. That was going to change. He may have made a little bit more concessions. He may give you a bigger chunk of stimulus money, whatever the case was.
Right.
But that was probably.
But that's it. That's as far as it goes.
That's as far as it goes.
That's as far as it goes. And people have to understand that, like, his international perspective is not in favor of the masses of the people there. Exactly. He's co-signing with all of that. And that's what people have to understand. Like, it's not just about what your condition, how you live in your life in the particular square of the world you're living in. Like, this is a system that affects all of us, and that awareness is crucial.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's just you have to understand on all levels. And even when we speak of our ancestors, I think it's always good to internationalize that as well and tie in the struggle, because a lot of the struggles are tied in different ways. You know, just stuff I've been reading about the continent, you know. You have revolutionaries like in Mozambique, you know, and the Frelimo going to Algeria, getting help from Tanzania. I can't say the words right now. With Julius Nyerere. You know, and, you know, you think about PAIGC and Guinea-Bissau, and you think about Guinea, you know, they were getting help from, Guinea essentially, Secretary and the PDG, getting help from Nkrumah and so forth and so on. You know, like the connection is deep and interwoven. Essentially, you know, George Padmore was close with Nkrumah. You know, Du Bois is close to Nkrumah, and all these things intertwined. Malcolm X. You know, he had a relationship with him as well. And
if it wasn't for Nkrumah, we wouldn't even have a radical '60s movement. Like what happened?
Yeah,
that would have never even happened if it wasn't for Nkrumah. And the fact that most Africans in America have not even heard that name or is aware of his struggle and just what's been waged in Africa on the ground.
Yeah, because when Ghana got free in '57, it was like it kind of just like, man, everyone on the continent and outside the continent was like, man, we want to be liberated, you know.
Yeah.
When I was reading this book on Secretary Ture, it started talking about everyone, even the bourgeois, and this is African, the petty bourgeois was, even if they didn't really mean it, they had to play lip service to independence now, because that's what worked, you know, and that's what the masses wanted in Africa. So it was a thing. Behind closed doors, they could have felt a different way. Some still was opposed to it, but the majority was like, no, we want independence. You know, you started seeing it. You know, this is speed up to independence, and the Western European colonialists was like, man, they were shocked because they thought colonialism was going on for decades. You know, fast what it was in some countries, but it's like, man, once that happened, but kind of goes into internationalizing the struggle and understanding, on various fronts our ancestors struggled on, because I think you also have that rhetoric of, our ancestors were just docile. We were okay with slavery. We were okay with colonialism. And, just a brief look on history is like, no, see, like, that's definitely not true. We fought on all fronts, from the slave ship, before the slave ship. We always fought. So
we was always fighting.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we'll continue to do so.
Yeah. Exactly.
Even some, and not to mention those national ancestors, their ancestors were fighting in the struggle, like Malcolm X. Like both his parents were in the UNIA.
Exactly.
Kwame Ture, his grandfather Samori Ture, was against the French, and for example.
Yeah. Yes. They got what happened?
And cult, like a lot of the African cultures, there's ancestral worship, and ancestral is a big part of it. So, so now you You're incorrect. Historically,
You're not right. Like you answering your cultural call, like
exactly, yeah.
Call that's just embedded within us, where we, like the libations, like we do so much in honor of our ancestors, not even realizing, these subliminal ways we honor our ancestors. So, I mean, lighting a candle, incense, all of these things, sage, the idea of just this intercessory prayer, all of these things that our ancestors have been a part of. Like, why not be proud of that? Why not honor that every day? It doesn't just stop after February 28th,
Yeah.
Like, we honor our ancestors every day. Like I say, when I work out, I honor my ancestors. I honor my ancestors every morning I wake up. When I read a book, anytime I think of just the work that's been done, there's a way to, that just provides a path for me to just acknowledge and thank my ancestors for just doing it, that have actually done the work. We wouldn't be here today. All of what we have, it was for their struggle.
Exactly. Like everything they sacrifice, is everything they sacrifice and we've gotten is off of them. And we have cultural resistance, some of which you understand is like, to kind of go into a middle Cauca brawl, it's like, we've always used our cultural resistance in a way as a tool as well. So I think we have to understand that, and and it kind of goes into that line where it's like, whether there's oppression, there's resistance, and that applies to any group of people. Like, even the Europeans, Western Europeans, when they were, feudalism and was running rampant, and capitalism, some distance, they some extent, fought back too. So, everywhere, you think about, Asians, Latinos, whatever, every group is always fought whenever dealt with oppression. That includes Africans. So I don't know why people just want to exclude Africans. I know, we're not,
right.
We're not the top of the ladder, but we did fight too. So I think that's important to talk about.
We'll be. We'll be back, but not to rule over, but to rule with.
Bars. Evan came with the bars, man. That's mad true. Yeah. I know some of y'all reactionaries. Y'all want to rule over. Nah, I want to rule over the white man. Nah, this it don't work that. Come on, man. Don't work that way, man. I know y'all want to be reactionaries and stuff like that, but nah, man, you can't. It don't work that way. But yeah. All right. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we conclude?
I would just encourage people to read up on your ancestors. We're going to name a few in the description, so that you can just do your research and just read about it. And hopefully it'll encourage you to join in fighting for justice. Join an organization. Smash patriarchy. Smash all of these concepts that have been influenced through the media, the propaganda machine. Being a part of an organization is going to help you do that. And one thing, again, that the A-APRP, we constantly, like this episode, we're honoring 2 ancestors, and we're going to do that continuously, just so that we remind ourselves that it's not just a struggle in a vacuum. It's just not like, okay, I'm the only one struggling. Like, no one else is struggling but me. I'm the only one struggling. No one has helped me. No. There are many people all around the world that we can connect with that understanding with. And so I would just encourage you to remember that, and incorporate honoring your ancestors as a part of your day-to-day process, whatever that looks like, because we can't just act as if this is just a new thing. A lot of us feel like it's just new, but history tells us that these lines.
And also, if there's a barrier to you reading, listen, watch, however way you can. Discuss with anyone in organizations for empowering your African people.
Yeah. If you don't like what we talk about, you hate all of us. In A-APRP, build your own organization, or join another organization. You can join the Black Alliance for Peace, Malcolm X grassroots movement. There's so many others that are out there that you could join. So feel free if you want to reach out to us or, try to find organizations, you can also go to our website and find our brothers, sisters, alliances, organizations that we're in alliance with too. So with that being said, that concludes this episode of the Pantsula Podcast. Glad you guys could join us today. We look forward to having you on our next episode. And before I conclude, go ahead and pay respects to our comrade who's actually been in the hospital since February. She's having to deal with medical bills right now. She got in an accident, getting hit by a truck.
Right. I spoke to Jamilah. Let me just say quickly, just to update you guys. Like, Jamilah is a true warrior. Like, she told me all of the pills she takes daily. Yeah. I thought it was just like 2 or 3 pills in the morning. She takes at least 30 pills.
Yeah,
She just
has on morphine. I remember
with the leg amputated. It's like this is going to be a whole new life for her. And I love talking to Jamilah all the time because we always laugh. But to just see just this newness of her life right now, please do what you can to support her. She is a dear friend and comrade. Like this, I'm just still surprised by this happening. She's been in the hospital for over a month now.
Yeah,
definitely trucking along. She's so strong beyond what I think I could endure. So just please give your love to Jamilah. She's amazing, and
yeah.
That's the part of that you support. That's not just going out and shooting or one thing. It's also supporting the comrades that they're limited. You gotta do that too. That's another thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Help all your comrades as you can. So we'll put in the description box the link for a GoFundMe. Feel free to contribute. We're not going to shame anybody for contributing for anything they can. So if it's $1, whatever the case you can do, just please help to the cause. So with that being said, appreciate you guys for joining again, and see you guys in the next episode. For whatever.
Forward.